Welcome again to our channel, One Africa Black Media, where we see African greatness, black greatness, and where we look at the issues affecting Africa in the past and in the present, and where we make suggestions as how we can shape the future of Africa for better financial stability and for full financial independence. We also believe in the full reparations for the African slave trade. Remember to like, subscribe and share as we advance our African greatness. Now, in this episode titled Africa Should Abandon Western Democracy, we want to look at some quick issues from an economic perspective. And this is very important again because like we know today in the world, there are the three major continents. Our largest regions are Africa, Asia, and Europe, basically. And when we look at Asia, Europe, and Africa, we'll realize that Africa is the weakest continent, even though it's one of the most populated. The closest one is Asia. Now, when we look at Africa also, we'll realize among Africa, Asia, and Europe, Africa has the most resources than all the other continents. But yet still, Africa could be considered the most impoverished physically. Because yes, spiritually we are wealthy, but physically we are poor. In other words, most of what Africa needs, it does not make it. It has to get it from its neighbors overseas. Everything has to be imported, even though we have all the raw material. And this is what Western democracy has set up systematically in Africa. And the issue is that Western democracy was given to Africa by, we could say, the colonizers and the slave traders. And for over the past 200 years, 300 years, Africa has been partaking in the system of governance, only to its own detriment and only to its own, we want to say, weakness. Because Africa is also the weakest militarily on the globe. It is also the weakest economically. Africa has many countries with populations over 10 million, over 15 million, over 40 million, over 80 million, over 100 million like Ethiopia, over 200 million like Nigeria. But yet still none of these countries have a GDP that can sustain the country and the population based on the economic model they follow from Western democracy. It's time for Africa to look at its own form, look at creating its own form of democracy that can work in unity with the way how Africa is governed traditionally. And what we're saying is that traditional marriage, traditional way of worship, all these things just form part of how Africa is governed. Because when you put away everything you know for what you don't know, what you are doing is taking chances. And taking chances most times take you nowhere economically, especially in this modern world where people are making weapons going like lightning, like in the case of Russia, just make a weapon that goes 13,000 kilometers per second. You know, actually 13 kilometers, yeah, per second, so or per minute. So the issue is, it's time for Africa to look at an economic model or a political model that is not based on Western democracy, that is based on the way African thinks, the way African live, so that Africa and the black race and black people can start getting some financial respect and some financial independence from being a slave from everything that is Western. And the only way to not be a slave is to create your own future and to create your own independence through one unity. So it is time that Africa put away Western democracy and look at even what Traore is doing and study it, because it is working, because Burkina Faso is on a part of full independence. It is time for Africa and the black race to come up with its own form of democracy that will shape an independent future for generations to come for the black race and Africa. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and share as we advance our African greatness.